Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Houseworth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal. And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
This guy has not only divided our party, he's divided families all over this country. He's divided friends all over this country. I've spoken to people, and I know everyone else has, who have sat at Thanksgiving dinner or at a birthday party and can't have a conversation anymore if they disagree with Donald Trump.
Chris Christie loses points. He's got it completely wrong. Trump is not responsible for how people behave within their families. Nobody makes you do anything at the Thanksgiving table. If y'all can't get along, that doesn't have to do with somebody that's not even there. That's within y'all. Chris Christie has it wrong, but I'm going to give him points for one of the things that he said last night. My goodness, I haven't laughed that hard in a long time. The debate exactly met my expectations, and that's not a positive thing, Steph.
And that was in response, I believe, to the question of who would you vote off the island, which they completely decided not to answer. And he said, well, I'd vote Trump off the island. I'm sorry, you need to vote anyone off of your Thanksgiving table who gets triggered by the word Trump such that they can't have a respectful family dinner. And who's talking about politics at their Thanksgiving table? But
Marsh, did the debate meet your expectations?
Yes.
Hannah?
Yeah. Actually, I was a little disappointed, if I have to tell the truth here. The first debate I felt like was kind of entertaining.
Yeah.
This one was just annoying. Yeah. I don't know. I was annoyed. I had my teeth clenched the whole time, waiting for it to be over. So
I listened to the debate. I'm laying in bed and I'm listening, and I'm so two things. Number one, I'm listening, and after a while, I'm like, okay, there's Tim, that's Nikki, that's Vivek, there's Chris. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure Doug Burgum was in this debate. I had to turn on the TV. I'm like, oh, yeah, sure enough, there he is. He covered this post-game.
I think what was interesting is that, I'm the only business person on the stage. I've created more jobs than everybody else combined on the stage. It was supposed to be about the economy, and 45 minutes into it, I wasn't even asked a question.
Poor Doug.
You got to speak up, Doug. That's everyone else was just jumping on in. And it's weird that he says he's the only business person. I mean, Vivek obviously had a business, and he caught a lot of flack last night over his business and his dealings with China.
I felt like he took the most flack out of all the candidates on the stage. I felt like everyone was coming after him the most.
For sure.
Other than Donald Trump.
Oh, my gosh, this Chris Christie line. And he goes after Trump, and I don't care because I'm not a wuss. I still find it funny. But this is the thing. So I'm laying in bed and I'm listening to the debate. I'm not watching it. I'm listening.
Let me just say,
text messages, they can get all of
this
these
is important.
things.
This is
China
very important for our party.
Exactly what they're
this
doing.
is very important for our
what
party, and I'm going to say
you've gone and
mind-numbing. Seriously. And I get it. That's how debates work, and they shouldn't. I wish you could just sit down and talk. Have a beer. Let's talk about difference in policy. Let's talk about what I would do if I do get the job. Let's do that. And sitting and listening to it. Man, I pulled my hair out. Look,
kind of a train wreck in spots. Well, the boy Nikki Haley did a lot of interrupting out of turn.
A lot of them did, but Branden, and John, you're absolutely right too. The moderators, and I had it on the TV monitor, but I was listening as well. It's a couple of points. If people were watching the closed captioning, it would like go off, and it actually said speakers overlapping. It did.
That's helpful.
It set our internal alarm off at least once at the radio station last night because I think it thought it was dead air, but they just kept talking over each other. I really like Stuart Varney and I like Dana Perino, but they lost control, and you can't have that. And I do agree with the governor of North Dakota. I mean, he should have been asked a question earlier than 45 minutes.
I don't know if the moderators ever had control. I feel like 30 seconds into it, they were already squabbling and talking over each other.
If there's a winner, I think Frank Lutz, who's well-known, respected poller, he said Trump won. Gavin Newsom, who is all chummy with Sean Hannity post-game on Fox. Sean Hannity had Gavin Newsom. They're getting ready for the Newsom-DeSantis ideology debate coming up in November. But there's Gavin Newsom hanging out with Mr. Hannity again. Hannity's here today, 2 o'clock. We can't wait to get his take. But what I thought was interesting, Gavin was asked, who won the debate? His answer, Joe Biden.
Yikes.
And what's even scarier is what Gavin Newsom was saying. He says, all of these candidates up here, they all talked about problems, but Joe Biden is handling these problems right now. And I'm just,
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
away.
something I missed last night, I really, I felt like in the first debate we did get a lot on the issues and got some differentiation on topics like abortion and other things. And I felt like there was so much crosstalk and so much pettiness that we didn't really get as much on the issues. I also thought being at the Reagan Library, we might get more on the economy and more kind of, here's how we are going to return to Reaganomics or, more about that era and how we might restore our country. And there really wasn't a lot of that.
But that gets back to the manners of today. And people just don't see. You're absolutely right. You contrast that fiasco last night. It was embarrassing. No question about it. And you wait and see. The Democrats are going to really hammer them all on this. Trump wasn't there. They can't really hammer him for that. But you contrast that to the debate that President Reagan had with Gerald Ford in 1976, debates, plural. I mean, that was you talk about contentious, challenging a sitting president, and they actually discussed the issues. But those moderators had control. I mean, those moderators had control to the point where President Reagan said, I am paying for this microphone. But they did have control. In Dana and Stewart, they are the moderators. At some point, you almost have to, warn them all. It almost sounded like something that it was almost impossible to hear them at times.
Did you hear? I forget which one of the moderators said it, but they're like, "We don't want to have to turn off your microphone," and I'm sitting there like, "That's an option." Why didn't we do that a long time ago?
Well, the moderator on Reagan in the 1980 debate, he threatened to cut off Governor Reagan's microphone. He did. And
remember 4 years ago, Chris Wallace kind of losing control in the debates.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, and it's kind of embarrassing because really, again, they're all just competing for second place, and second place is still first loser. You don't really get anything. And I don't know when I heard some Trump audio, and I'm not sure if he said it yesterday, but he was talking about the debates, and he basically said, I don't see a VP among that group, so it's not like they're even competing for second.
Trump in Michigan.
It's all over television, this speech. We're competing with the job candidates. They're all running for a job. No, they're all job candidates. They want to be in they'll do anything. Secretary of something. They even say VP. I don't know. Does anybody see any VP in the group? I don't think so. No, we're, that's right. Can you imagine? They don't have a crowd like we have. When you look at the thousands of people outside that couldn't get in, why didn't you build a bigger plant? I'd like to.
So I heard Vivek when he says you see a vice presidential candidate. I heard Vivek, and then it sounded like I heard Loomer. Were they saying Laura Loomer? That's the only name I could hear shouted out for VP was Vivek in that crowd.
And that is a pretty union area, by the way, that he
they
was
were
at.
saying. They were saying Boomer Esiason for VP.
By the way, we have some interesting Missouri poll numbers regarding party breakdowns and what folks think about the United Auto Workers strike. We are covering that this morning. Fox's Ryan Schmetz, he's here 6:35. Next big thing, impeachment inquiry begins today in Washington, D.C. People like Comer and Jordan, they take their case from Fox News now to actually the House. Ryan Schmetz is in D.C. getting ready to be here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Tobler's here 7:10. Some of the things happening on the show this morning. What did you think about the debate last night? And here's the thing, this is what we expected, and I'm still disappointed. You know what I mean? It's just kind of a weird thing.
I do think it's kind of a chicken you-know-what for Trump to not be at these debates.
Do you?
I think that the front runners should be there to defend that title.
And I used to feel that same way. I was, you should be there, but I've evolved, and here's why I evolved on the issue, because Trump isn't going to debates. Now I'm like, yeah, that's the right. But no, I agree, and I've thought that way for a long time. You should be there. I don't feel that way in this circumstance. Now we have a gubernatorial debate coming up.
Yeah, we do.
And I would assume that our current Lieutenant Governor, Mike Keogh, I would assume Secretary of State Jay Ashcroft, State Senator Bill Eigel, I would assume they'd all be there. But that's like a different set of circumstances. Nobody has formerly served as governor. Nobody is, that we know of at least, is the front runner in that race. So that's a different set of circumstances. By the way, you and Marsh are handling that?
Yeah, that'll be in October. Really looking forward to that. That'll be at the Missouri Farm Bureau. And there's a fourth candidate as well. It's a gentleman from Joplin that spoke at the Lincoln Days here in Boone County. So that'll be something, but I'm frustrated because I don't feel like there is a discussion out there of issues, and if there are, you've got people booing and stuff like that. It's just the manners is just really bothers
and
me.
It's like, and I expected that, and it happened, and I'm really disappointed. However, I will give, and we're going to feature some highlights throughout the morning, highlighting, I think, kind of what we're saying, that like, this is just a mess. Chris Christie.
He looked directly in the camera.
Of course he did.
I got to give him points, man.
And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight, not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record. You're ducking these things. And let me tell you what's going to happen. You keep doing that, no one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
All right. I want to ask Dr.
So I think you could hear a little bit of booing and people that didn't want to laugh. Because here's the thing. It's like with Saturday Night Live. Well, I don't watch it because they criticize Trump. Well, I'm a big Trump supporter, but I don't care. It's just comedy. And I think you'd hear in the reaction, people like, okay, I love Trump, but that's kind of funny, man.
And as soon as he said it on the radio, had the TV on, I knew that would be a sound. It would be a soundbite used by the newscast, and rightfully so. It's newsworthy. I mean, you have a former a Trump supporter right there from a critical blue state that he carried. Christie did, blasting the former president. I thought that was big.
Well, Christie knew it would be the highlight too. I mean, there was a lot of scripted responses.
Chris Christie was up on that stage as you were watching the debate last night, and he says, I'm going to say something here. And I know Stephanie Bell and producer Hannah Halsworth, John Marsh, and Branden Rathert, they're all going to be talking about this tomorrow. And he was right. I thought it was a funny line. And John, Brian and John, congratulations. You guys apparently personally asked to moderate the gubernatorial debate.
Nobody's getting out of hand in the audience while Brian's there.
Man, you don't want
enforcers.
You don't want Marsh going all Chris Wallace on you, that's for sure. Coming up,
I'll turn your mic off in a heartbeat.
5 minutes from now, Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
We're going to have the latest on the government shutdown. I'm going to leak it a little bit early in that I think it might be very similar to what you've heard from us for the last couple days.
The walls are closing in.
38 years. And
Ew.
So full disclosure.
That didn't land well, did it?
I hated that.
That was weird.
Yuck.
What a weird way of saying you've been married for almost 4 decades.
He was trying to make the point. What was a little bit of context there is he spent 35 seconds. He was answering a question about something. This was after Chris Christie said, well, Joe Biden is sleeping with a member of the teachers union, and rightly called out how these teachers unions are bad. And I know this. Had a friend ran unsuccessfully school board 2 years ago in Columbia. My gosh, what these teachers, it is sick. I mean, it's not just bad. It is sick what these teachers unions do. So Chris Christie making the point about Joe Biden, Jill Biden being a teachers union. Pence starts answering a question and then spends like 38 seconds. He put GPS on the phone. How do I come back so I can try to land this joke that did not land?
Certainly did not. And if you weren't impressed by the debate last night, I'm sad to say you're probably not going to be impressed by the show today in D.C. I think everyone's glad that they're finally opening these impeachment hearings in D.C. It's something they said they would do, but today is not going to be the day to tune in. Rather than really focusing on the Bidens, they're going to kind of lay the groundwork and the foundation. They're going to hear from outside experts in tax law, criminal investigations, and constitutional legal theory. So if you haven't gotten enough legal nerd talk from Stephanie Bell this week.
8:35 this morning, Stephanie's going to go into a 12-minute monologue about legalese because she is incredibly good at it.
We are going to be hearing from Fox's Ryan Schmetz at 6:35 about this. He is in D.C., so I'm interested to see what he knows and where, what's the next hearing look like, because I think once we really start digging down into those Biden facts, I'm going to want to tune in.
Well, and one of the things we just learned 48 hours ago, John, that money in the wire money from one of the wire transfers, there were a lot of them. I think at least 2 of them were the transfers were directly to the address listed was Joe Biden's home address.
And we are also watching the slow government shutdown. It just feels like we are taking forever and we're not making any progress. And it doesn't look like we made much progress yesterday. Kevin McCarthy had a meeting behind closed doors. He says he's got a strategy. He doesn't want to do what the Senate is going to do, which their bill would fund the government to November 17th. It adds $6 billion for Ukraine and $6 billion for disaster relief. His proposal will slash spending by 8% and toughen border security. But he doesn't have the votes for it. And when asked, what's your path? Like, how are we going to push this forward? He's just said, I'm going to keep trying. He has no path.
I don't know.
It's not looking good. It really is not looking good. And no one can kind of articulate how. I mean, what do we have? We have 48 hours?
Yeah, basically.
So we will see if anything happens with that today. But no one is articulating a path forward. Also, this is such a bizarre story. The soldier who sprinted into North Korea, apparently we got him back. Did we want him back?
Well, that's the thing.
He was facing charges for something or another.
And I get that, but it was like you're going through all that effort to bring back a guy who willfully went into North Korea. I just thought it was weird.
And we don't really know why he did that, and we're not sure why North Korea is turning him back over, although they did. And John, you said he was declared AWOL from the Army, and for that he can face military jail, forfeiture of his pay, dishonorable discharge. But apparently on Wednesday, Swedish officials took Mr. King to the Chinese border. He was met by the U.S. ambassador to China, the Swedish ambassador to China, and one DOD official. Biden has been clear that we
social media apps that we could have. And what you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say. Because I can't believe that here you've got a TikTok situation.
That's the problem with politics.
I like how he said,
Right? Here you go. You go ahead. That's the problem. It was kind of like we talked about Matt Gaetz when he was criticizing the looks of Kevin McCarthy, stuff like that. And I get it. Hey, listen, I've been guilty of it. I have. But I'm also not running for any kind of elected office. And so when people do that, that's the thing. I'm like, come on, man.
I'm putting that one in my pocket. Like, that is savage. Like, that's one, like, you go home at night and you cry. Like, that is, every time you open your mouth, I feel a little bit dumber. I mean, could someone, like...
I can see Steph using that one in court.
I don't know if the judge would approve.
I would get in major trouble for that. But, I mean, honestly, like, is there anything... what's a worse insult? I mean, like, you ugly. Like, I mean, like, that maybe? I don't know. Like, but, like, I would rather someone tell me I'm ugly than every time you open your mouth, I feel stupid or dumb or, oh, my goodness.
I'll put forward another Matt Gaetz comment. This was several months ago when he was talking about women and the abortion fight, and he was talking about those women that want the right to keep it. He was talking about who would want to have sex with them anyway because they look like thumbs. That was pretty savage, but it also was not on a debate stage where people are trying to become president of the United States of America.
I was wondering, that Chris Christie Donald Duck audio sounded so scripted, like he had written that out and memorized that, and he was going to say that.
Practiced it in his bathroom mirror.
Oh yeah, he didn't care what the question was. He was gonna say exactly that. Nikki Haley. I don't think that line was scripted because I think her people would have been like, do not say that.
Don't call one of your fellow GOP contenders. Don't tell them you feel dumber every time you listen to them.
Well, and what's weird is she would say something like that, but then when they were like, hey, let's vote someone off the island, they're like, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that, which I'm like, get some gumption and put someone's name on the paper. Why not? You're asking the American people. We are going to have to vote someone off the island, and we are going to vote someone off the island, and we're going to have to pick a winner, but you guys can't tell us who you think. I mean, clearly, I think everyone would have wrote down Doug Burgum, right?
Who?
Yeah.
He wasn't even in the... Oh, he was in the debate.
Yeah, he said that like one line.
Yeah, I actually like him, and I don't think I would have put his name down. I think I would have put Chris Christie's name down.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
There's Mr. Marsh.
Good morning.
It's producer Hannah.
Good morning.
Ryan Hausworth is here. My name is Branden Rathert. Ryan Schmetz from Fox, we thought was going to be here. He's in D.C. because the big impeachment inquiry is happening. Maybe that's one of the things we'll get into with Randy Tobler when he's here. And I'm excited about our guest, Ilan Wurman. He's going to be joining us at 8:10. He just fought this incredible case as it relates to the law, as it relates to homelessness. Obviously, we've seen a big problem with homelessness in Missouri. He's going to be joining us at 8:10. It has to do with this case. Basically, the city of Phoenix was taking taxpayer dollars from businesses in this area, taking those taxpayer dollars, in effect, and then paying to just help support homeless people. They set up this big city there and everything, and these business owners are like, what the hell are you doing, man? You're a government entity. You're taking my tax dollars, and now you're screwing my business because guess what? People don't want to come down here and spend money. Incredible case. Hear his story. Coming up at 8:10 this morning, that question last night. So I listened to the debate. I didn't watch, and I don't know which is more frustrating. Because Hannah, you expressed frustration as you're watching it, and they're walking over each other and the yelling and the insults. And I'm listening to it. I'm lying there listening to it, and it was I don't know, almost infuriating. And then I heard this question from Dana Perino, and I'm like, that's an interesting question. Is anybody going to answer it? And I thought the response from the well, let me say this. There was one candidate first who said something, and then everybody else got on board. I thought the response, not the question, the response I thought was classy.
Now obvious that if you all stay in the race, former President Donald Trump wins the nomination. None of you have indicated that you're dropping out. So, which one of you on stage tonight should be voted off the island? Please use your marker to write your choice on the notepad in front of you. 15 seconds starting now. Of the people on the stage, who should be? I'm absolutely serious.
With all due respect, I mean, we're here, we're happy to debate, but I think that that's disrespectful to my fellow competitors.
Nobody wants to participate.
Let's do some questions. Let's talk about the future.
So the response, so you hear Nikki first saying, really? Is that really the question? And then Ron DeSantis says, I'm not going to do that. And you can hear the response from the audience to the question. And then the response from the audience to the response from DeSantis, I'm not going to do that.
The one time the whole night that any of them took a moral high road.
Boom.
Right. I wanted them to answer.
So did I.
I did too. I thought it was funny.
Yes.
It's amazing they didn't all shout Trump in unison.
Right. The other thing I thought was funny because they said, well, we're not going to answer this. And then Dana says, Chris, I saw you writing down an answer. She said, I didn't write anything. I didn't write anything.
No.
The other thing that I thought really interesting, you talked about contrived lines. I wonder how hard Pence had to go to get to this one.
Joe Biden doesn't belong on a picket line. He belongs on the unemployment line.
I used to do stand-up comedy, and I was horrible at it. Mm-hmm. I'm used to responses like that. I'm used to that. Man, I know how that feels. It was horrible. The other thing that I thought was interesting about Pence, because we just talked about this yesterday, where he spent a considerable amount of time, in my opinion, John, trying to distance himself from Trump. You agree with that?
Most definitely, and has for quite some time.
But then yesterday we highlighted this.
Country around will extend those Trump-Pence tax cuts.
The Pence-Trump tax cuts.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's going to pick and choose when he wants to be associated with Trump, right? He's going to pick out the positives of the presidency and align himself with those, but not the bad stuff, just the good stuff.
And, he sees Trump's poll numbers, right? And so early on, he was distancing himself. And now with those poll numbers, he's like, I'm going to hitch my wagon to the Trump train. But he was less angry last night. I will give him that.
And much more funny.
Creepy.
But he did the same thing again last night. He tried to hitch his wagon to that Trump horse.
We stood tall on the world stage, stood with our allies, stood up to our enemy.
We did this, we did that.
I thought he just kind of faded into the background again.
Yeah. And that's kind of my overall takeaway. And I'll go back to the thing that I'm taking away from this last night is it met my expectations. I think it exceeded my expectations, but not in a positive way. Like I knew it, you know what a debate's going to be. And I think with this particular race, it's decided. It really is, unless somebody ends up in jail or something like that.
That's a really good question. I kind of got into a debate with some of my colleagues before the debate about whether it is decided or not. And there was substantial disagreement about that because we kind of highlighted the Karl Rove article I think it was in the Wall Street Journal. And, nationally, the numbers are looking really good, but apparently the numbers are kind of soft when you start looking at those early primary states. And so there was a significant discussion among people who I think are educated, hey, if Trump's numbers don't look as good, or if someone performs really well in one of those early states, we could see a shakeup. Now, I think I'm in the camp of it's decided.
Yeah.
But I think not everyone's there. I'm interested to know if everyone,
874-9390. I'm kind of curious to what was your takeaway from the debate. Bob says via text, kind of sad that Nikki Haley was plagiarizing the movie Billy Madison. Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty universal, I think, on the text. People are, yeah. Meanwhile, and I want to contrast, so we had some great, and really they're all, for the most part, they all have the same mindset, right? They're all Republican conservatives, and you like everything about them. But then there's the stage presence and the persona. You can contrast Mike Pence with somebody like Vivek Ramaswamy. And that does shape our opinions on who it is we decide to vote for. But then while the debate is happening, you could see progressive policies at work in Philadelphia, second night in a row. And now they're putting different names. They're not calling it looting. Some people are calling it shoplifting. I think the new term I've heard is mass shoplifting. But those are progressive policies at work, like Target shutting down some stores. That's because of Democrat policies where they don't want to penalize people for breaking laws. This on CNN. CNN law enforcement intelligence analyst John Miller.
Where is this happening? And you're seeing this kind of, looting happening, shoplifting and organized retail theft happen in places like New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia. If you look at where Target closed 9 stores yesterday, these are places where bail reform laws, criminal justice reforms have taken the inside of a jail cell out of the equation. Getting put in jail is not in the equation any longer because of the laws that say it's a no bail offense. And DA's policies are they don't want people in custody
Yeah, rainbows and unicorns. Meanwhile, all these businesses getting robbed because of progressive. Those are Democrats, and that's why I don't criticize elected Democrats. I look at the people who voted for them. The same thing with the closures of Target. Target's like we can't sustain. We can't sustain this. So you see, that's why I don't vote Democrat. You see what happens with those policies. And it goes back to the circular stupidity and the lack of forward thinking because Democrats, rainbows and unicorns, hey, let's not put people in jail for stealing from other people. This will be a good idea because we're soft. And you see what happens. And it affects folks. Coming up a few minutes from now, we do have some good news this morning as it relates to who likes going to the DMV. Let me ask your mindset before. I'm one of those. And I get in my head sometimes, and my head's a dangerous place to be.
Sometimes. That's funny.
But like when you have to go to the DMV, is it kind of like it's a thing?
That's man duty. Anything dealing with cars, I refuse.
Department of Revenue is trying to make man duty here in Missouri a little bit easier. That story's coming up just a few minutes from now. We have and to get his take on the debate last night. I think my big takeaway, it was as expected. Really, nothing new. Some failed one-liners from Pence. The great line from Chris Christie regarding Donald Trump ducking out of the debates, and the new nickname. I don't think I'd ever heard this nickname. And again, a Trump supporter, don't freak out. I know some people, a lot of Trump supporters, they also get triggered whenever you criticize Trump. And this is not a criticism. It was just a funny line by Chris Christie. I'd never heard that name before. The nickname.
Donald Duck?
Donald Duck. I'd never heard Donald Trump called that before. I thought it was a good name. We'll get Randy's take on that coming up at 7:10.
I was a little disappointed nobody got called a bloated fart bag, but I guess I'll let it slide.
That was a line that Fox's Kennedy used on Whoopi Goldberg, host of The View. And we do have some good news for you this morning. It's a man duty, says Steph. DMV, that's something. I don't blame you. Who goes to the DMV for you?
My husband. Anything dealing with cars.
Maybe he would do it for me, too, because, you usually, John, you got to go once a year.
You do?
Yeah.
To the DMV? Why?
Typically.
2 years.
Every 2 years. Every 2 years. That's why. To get your car relicensed. Get your car redone.
Can't you do it in the mail?
Yeah, you can do it online.
You can't.
What I try to do.
They're poking holes in your story.
Never mind. Let's go on to the next thing. Columbia has announced roll cart selection postcards.
No, go back to the other
but
one.
But when you purchase the new car, you have to go to the DMV, right?
So the point I was apparently failing to make is when you go to the DMV, you don't go and guess where we're going today, kids? We're going to the DMV.
Oh no, there's a Disney movie called Zootopia, and it's one of those movies where all the characters are animals, and they go to the DMV in that movie, and all of the animals who work at the DMV are sloths.
It is one of the best scenes in. I love that movie.
They move at the speed at which you would expect an animated sloth to move, and it's one of the more accurate depictions in a cartoon that I have seen.
So when you go to the DMV... and
Wait till you need tags the next time.
Yeah.
And you deal with all the sloths there. It's not a fun experience. Department of Revenue is trying to shorten those times. They say the goal is to ensure that you get in and out within 15 to 30 minutes. Connie McLaughlin runs the Sedalia DMV, and she spoke with KOMU.
The greeter at the door can go over their paperwork, and if they don't have what they need, then they can leave right then and go get it rather than wait in line and get to the counter and be sent away.
So when you go, or when your husband goes, because that's the other thing. I mean, you stand there and you go, okay, you get on the internet, you say, okay, I got to have these documents, I got this, and that, and then you're in your car, okay, I've got these documents. Maybe it's just me, and then I stand there in line. Okay, I'm double checking. I've double checked 12 times to make sure we've got these documents. But in Sedalia, she's saying what we're trying to do is put somebody at the door so they can turn you away quicker. Nope, you don't have all the right documents.
It's almost like the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. Like instead of serving everyone at the menu board, they come out to you. They extend it.
I like that. And what a lot of people don't know is these DMV offices are privately contracted. So the state right now is actually engaged in issuing these contracts. So there are lots of people who own more than one. Some people only manage one. But the state, there are like specific requirements about, working quickly and processing transactions and that kind of thing. And John, I want to gatekeep this so bad. And I don't want to say it because I know there are people who know this, but some people who don't. But the secret is there is one in Jefferson City in the Truman Building. And I think you can go there.
There's a DMV in Jefferson City inside the Truman Building.
And that's right where and every time I've gone there, they're very quick. And actually, I have been in the DMV, and the ones in Midmo, at least I would say, the ones have been better than I expected. It's kind of like going to the dentist. I think people get in their head about it, and they're like, oh, I don't want to go. And then you go, and you're like, that wasn't that bad. I don't know anybody who's waited an hour or even half an hour.
Well, those people, that put it off, go, oh, heck, Monday is the 1st, and I don't have my tag, so they go in on a Friday. And there's a big line of people at the end of the month. Don't be surprised by that.
Yeah, for sure. You want to time it right. You do not want to be there at the end of the month.
See, when I go to the DMV, I have to take in a form from my eye doctor saying that I'm not blind and I'm good to drive because I fail the vision test at the DMV every time.
Why?
I have an eye condition that doesn't mesh well with the DMV's like little machine for whatever reason. And so I have to have my eye doctor fill out a form saying that I can see and I have to take it into the DMV with me.
Well, just get ready because as soon as you actually get hitched, you're going to need like 17 copies of your marriage license, like the official with the stamps. And you have to carry them around for like a year. And every place you go, they won't,
is closer to bioterrorism, not a drug overdose. That is poisoning. So it is our job to make sure that never happens. But it's also our job to make sure that 17-year-olds don't turn to Percocet via Snapchat.
And Vivek Ramaswamy, absolutely right there about fentanyl comes from the secure border. As a matter of fact, I saw Ayanna Pressley, Congresswoman, Democrat Congresswoman from Massachusetts, on CNN yesterday. Jake Tapper of CNN asked her, "Is the border?" She asked her about the border, and she says the border is secure. And if you were watching, you would see Jake Tapper, kind of like how Hannah and Stephanie look at me a lot of times. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, Jake Tapper, when Ayanna Pressley says the border is secure, Jake Tapper looked at her like, what the heck?
Like WTH?
What are you talking about? Randy Tobler hosts the Tobler Show weekdays here at 4 o'clock. Is that I thought that was a brilliant point by Vivek. These drugs are coming through the secure border. The fentanyl comes from Mexico, it comes from China. He says this is bioterrorism. Is that, in your mind, is that a stretch?
Well, let's see. It's biological because it affects the biological system, Brandon. And terrorists affect, they don't have targeted individuals, right? It's basically innocent people. And I mean, I guess folks that use illegal drugs are not innocent, but still, I mean, I think in the broad sense of the term, he's right. And he pointed out the absurdity of what you pointed out with these officials, both at the state and the federal level. I mean, how do these people sleep at night when they say this border is open, looking at those drone pictures from Fox News and others? Holy cow.
And I wonder sometimes if a bunch of these progressives, if they get around and they go, all right, let's see what kind of crazy BS we can spout today with a straight face and see if people believe it. Debate last night, you've got a couple of takes on it. And I think here on the show, Steph, your big takeaway from the debate last night? Marsh?
Pretty much.
Hannah? Yeah. My expectations were low, and the debate met my expectations. And a lot of the stuff that happened, listen, we all know that, right? We kind of expected that, but it was just kind of especially. What's the big takeaway that you'll share on your show this afternoon at 4?
How sophomoric can a bunch of supposed statesmen and women be? I mean, I've never seen such fifth grade classroom behavior. I mean, it was just, I kept waiting for the spitwads to start flying. Maybe they start playing tabletop football with that triangular folded up newspaper, 8.5 by 11. Remember, Brandon, when we used to do that? And you'd kick it across the, I mean, it was just so unprofessional, it was just not becoming of the kind of behavior you'd expect to see. I mean, just talking over one another. I was glad that Haley and Burgum actually scored points in my book. He was beating the drum on the electronic medical record and what an absurd insult that was for patient care. So, I mean, sadly, he and DeSantis are sort of like my favorite far on the spectrum people. I mean, they really are really smart people that know a lot of great things about leadership. Their governor experience shows that. They don't get style points. And sadly, that seems to be what drives American voters these days. But I think everyone gets turned off by the talking over one another and the back and forth vitriolic yelling. That's not helpful.
I was listening. I didn't watch. I listened to it here on the radio station. I prefer to listen to debates instead of watching. But I'm listening to this last night, and it was driving me insane, the amount of when, and you know how it is, and people talking over you and everybody wants to chime in about something at the same time. It is incredibly frustrating to listen to. But will you talk more the electronic medical record? Somebody listening right now, they're thinking, okay, they were talking about the electronic medical records. How does that impact somebody listening right now? That discussion last night.
Well, I think it was Doug Burgum that said, "Who wants to watch? To be talking to your doctor when your doctor's back is to you, with on the computer." And I think that's just a bit of a microcosm of what's gone in medicine with government overreach. No, but Brandon, whether we're talking education, healthcare, construction of Highway 70, the connector, it's almost anything we talk about. When the government overreaches, the citizens don't fare well. Just think about it. You were just talking about the DMV. They could make that process a lot easier. They could make it much less onerous, But they get their hands in the pie. They create government jobs. They create more paperwork. And no one likes it. The people doing the paperwork don't like it. The people complying with the paperwork. That's what's happened to medical care. And I thought it was great when Nikki Haley, by the way, sort of she picked. She took no hostages. She said, "We want transparencies. We want the insurance companies, the pharmacy benefit managers, the hospitals, the doctors' offices." But it hurt me when she said they all have warts. I just visited my dermatologist. I haven't seen a wart yet, but that's okay. But when she said insurance companies, you know what's missed? You know why she's a big government traditional semi-rhino? She didn't call out the biggest insurance company in the country. You know who that is? The Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. No, we don't touch that.
All right, Randy Tobler hosts the Randy Tobler Show weekdays, 4 o'clock here on the radio station. Joining us, and I try to pick, listen, they're all conservative. Well, I should say they're all Republicans. Like the mindset of all of them, really no separation in the debate last night, and at least in my opinion, nothing different. One of the things maybe of substance after Pence again talked about referring to him and Trump. He did this just the other day, and I find it fascinating. He spent a lot of time trying to distance himself from Trump, and now 2 days in a row he's saying we and Trump, the Trump-Pence tax cuts. I thought was fascinating. And maybe a little piece of substance here from Mr. Pence.
If I'm president of the United States, we're going to open up federal lands. We're going to unleash American energy. We're going to have an all-of-the-above energy strategy.
And that wasn't stepping out of a comfort zone, by the way. We'll open up federal lands for more oil. Any other interesting takeaways before we get on to now? There's another maybe big thing happening in D.C. today. Any other thing you watched the debate last night? You're a voter too. It's not just that you host a radio show. You and your wife vote. You walk away and go, this is shaping my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know about yet if I have that opinion shaped. I'd sure like to see 1 or 2 people up on the next debate stage and have some serious discussion. And I'd love to see it with Donald Trump up there, too. I mean, I really think what DeSantis said, that no one really should be entitled to this. Everyone should have to earn it. I think that's a very traditional conservative type of a viewpoint. But a minor thing, but I think maybe it isn't a minor thing since it's such a stagecraft these days. Who is coaching Ron DeSantis after he makes a beautiful, soaring, I'm going to close the borders, law and order will be the wall, I'm going to abolish the regulations. And then for those in your room who saw it, the funny little smirk he gets, it's like someone has coached him to smile, just like someone has coached Vivek Ramaswamy to have that ungodly, glaring smile that he forces all the time. Who is giving performance coaching to these people? Someone in the RNC needs to talk to him because it's not helpful.
And I wonder who coached Nikki Haley on what to wear. And I don't like to talk about what people wear or don't wear. By the way, the Senate, Chuck Schumer, evolved real quickly on the issue of a dress code in the Senate. Fetterman's not going to be able to dress like he's a plumber in the Senate. No offense against plumbers, by the way. I thought that was interesting. But I heard somebody say this morning, what about the Nikki's outfit? I really don't care, but it just struck me as like she was getting ready for a Christmas party or something. That was my first thought.
The fabric was wrong, and it looked funny on camera.
But that's nothing of substance. That was just an observation. Our guest, Randy Tobler, hosts the Randy Tobler Show. He's joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Randy, maybe a medical question this morning. What's up with all the drug shortages with oncology drugs and common antibiotics and sterile injectables and all? And is there a light at the end of that tunnel?
Same thing that's happened in a lot of our supply chain across industry. I mean, the auto parts, we saw it there. We see it we saw it with masks during the pandemic. When you decide to sell your entire manufacturing base on whatever industry, including pills and injectables to China, because it's so cheap, that's what happens. It's good while it lasts, but when the spigot turns off like that, you have nothing as a safety net, and that's what we're dealing with right now. It's really sad to see. I mean, people are scrambling to get, and it's worse because now more than ever, the chemotherapies are so much different and better than they were just a decade ago, and to have them not available just breaks our heart. And people are scrambling. Hospitals are working together, trying to share resources, but sometimes they come up short. It's a tragedy.
Dr. Tobler, a quick question about the motorcycle helmet repeal. That came up quite a bit. I was at the transportation conference in Columbia, 2 of them the last week or so, and I did confirm with MoDOT Director Patrick McKenna that the number of traffic fatalities, first of all, they're up in general 15% in the past 5 years. Wrong way crashes are up. but the number of motorcycle fatality crashes are up since the helmet law was repealed. Your reaction?
Well, as a libertarian, I think you should be able to do what you want to do. But as a libertarian, I don't think I should be responsible for the stupid moves you make. So I think people that want to drive without a helmet should show proof that they have extraordinarily good long-term rehab and brain injury coverage, because these people end up in ICUs. Yeah, sadly, they die. But before they die, very often, sadly, they incur a tremendous amount of expense. And I'm not trying to minimize the health the hazards of this and the tragedy that happens in families and personally when people are left maimed after these accidents. But the head injuries are the big issue here, obviously. And look, if you want to drive without a helmet, that's fine. Just don't ask me to pay for it when you end up needing expensive, chronic, long-term, on top of the acute care forever. And so I'm a bit Darwinian there. Just take care of yourself, do what you want. Don't ask me to cover your consequences.
One of the things I've wondered, if you were to talk to somebody who's a motorcyclist who got into a bad accident with head injuries because they weren't wearing a helmet, I've often wondered, how would they answer the question, do you regret not wearing a helmet? Randy Tobler, host of the Randy Tobler Show, weekdays, 4 o'clock. What can we look forward to today?
Well, it's funny. We're going to be talking about accountability, government accountability. There's 5 hours worth of talk there with Patrick Ishmael. And then Jennifer Bukowski Thursday afternoons. Always a lot of fun.
I enjoy it when she's on the show. Randy Tobler, we'll check out your show this afternoon at 4. All right. Phone's on fire or something. I don't know what happened there. By the way, we've dealt with the issue of homelessness in mid-Missouri, especially in the mid-Missouri city of Columbia, and what a mess it's been there. There's a landmark case. Am I exaggerating to use the phrase landmark stuff?
No, I think that's right.
Yeah, it's a landmark case as it relates to homelessness and city taxpayer dollars going to take care of homeless people. An attorney who successfully argued this case, he's going to be joining us at 8:10 this morning, so please don't miss that. Coming up 5 minutes from now, we're going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah.
I have probably the most genius marketing move I've ever seen in my life.
Date Taylor Swift.
Not quite.
All right, but it's a
It's actually 7:25.
Time for What's Hot with Hannah.
Now, we work kind of in the marketing industry. We've seen a lot of really good marketing campaigns. We have several creative folks in the building who win national awards for their advertising. And this is maybe right up there with some of those, marketing campaigns that have won those national awards here in the building. It comes to us from Iowa, specifically the Iowa pork producers. And they're taking advantage of the new name, image, likeness rules for college athletes. They found 4 football players on the Iowa State football team who have some last names that they could use in their marketing campaign for pork products. So I'm going to read you their last names and see if you can put this together.
All right, it's puzzle time. Do I got to get pen and paper?
You don't need pen and paper, but it is posted on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page if you would like to follow along. Yeah, there you go. So there's Miles Purchase, Tyler Moore, Tommy Hammond, and Caleb Bacon.
I got it.
So if you put those 4 last names together, what do you get, Brandon?
Purchase Moore, Hammond, Bacon.
Yes. So they put these 4 guys back to back so you can read the names on the backs of their jerseys. And it reads Purchase Moore, Hammond, Bacon. And I think it's genius. It's gone viral on Twitter for obvious reasons. And it's genius. It's simple. It's kind of a dad joke, which we know is right in my wheelhouse. And it's really clever, I think.
Now all they need to do is draft a kicker named Slaughter, and they got it covered, right?
Yes.
I'm wondering, though, at team practice this week, if you've got all the players who are supposed to be paying attention and they're all rearranging themselves on the sidelines, like, what can we spell with our last names? And the coach is like, get back on the field.
That'd be like, is it kind of the same thing as calling this feature What's Hot with Hannah? Or, no, The Morning Bell.
There
right?
you go.
Stephanie Bell,
Yeah.
we talk about the opening.
It's about the branding.
And it's all
about the branding.
Branding.
Wouldn't you love to be the guy with the Iowa pork producers who went, hey, wait a second. We could sign these 4 guys and it would spell out this.
That guy, yeah, he should be promoted. And I love, because we talk about marketing, it's such a broad term. But I have friends that will laugh at me. If I'm in a group of people and we get to talking and they say, well, what do you do for a living? I say marketing. Because I don't want to get into the thing about, well, I host this little radio show with Stephanie and Hannah and John and Brian. So I just say marketing.
So funny story, when I was looking for a rental to live in a couple years ago, I was messaging with a potential landlord on Facebook, and she asked me what I did for a living, and I said radio, and I'm not even kidding, she ghosted me. Like, I never got another response. So maybe I need to implement that tactic.
Well, and there's a political aspect to it. It's like my dad, who's he's a cashier wearing a smock, slinging smokes and beers at a gas station in Jefferson County, Missouri. Or I could say my dad is in the oil industry.
There you go.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. My mom, she did security for the federal government. My mom was pretty sharp, too. She worked on SR-71s, U-2s, B-52s in the United States Air Force. And when she got out of the Air Force, she worked at the Arch for the federal government, and she monitored security cameras all day. So people would say, what does your mom do for a living? She does security for the federal government.
It's like
would it stand up in court?
Sure, that's factual.
Maybe not this weekend when they shut down the Arch.
Yeah, it's like when you go to, write a resume and you got to make your skills sound real flowery.
You got it.
to be done about our border, that it's just not sustainable. I mean, we see...
Well, I certainly disagree with any people, and certainly our most vulnerable who are fleeing great destabilization and violence and corruption from being used as political pawns. No doubt about it, our border is secure.
Where?
Yeah, that's the appropriate response, by the way. Silence. That really is. That's Ayanna Pressley who echoes. And she says, and you could hear that, John. She says the exact same thing Alejandro Mayorkas, Karine Jean-Pierre, and Joe Biden say. Our border is secure. My goodness, it's not.
Didn't you say, Hannah, Ben Shapiro was tweeting out about Doug Burgum and he just said W-U-T? What?
What?
That's what they should have said to her. Our border is secure.
What?
And not W-H-A-T, but that's a W-U-T what?
Yeah, Ben Shapiro, he listed out all of the candidates and he gave them a letter grade like they were getting a report card.
Following the debate last night. Yeah.
And at the very bottom, it was Doug Burgum. And yeah, he just said W-U-T.
What?
So I listened to the debate last night, and I'm listening. I'm like, okay, there's Nikki, there's Tim, there's Chris, and everybody. And I had to turn the TV on for a minute because I didn't hear from Doug Burgum. He was at the debate last night. Good morning, and welcome into Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Coming up, a landmark case as it deals with homelessness, and this is out of Phoenix. But this has the potential, we're looking at this here in mid-Missouri because of the issues we've had here.
It's significant. And what we know from, it was kind of a novel legal theory, and they won. And so they have said publicly that they're taking the fights to other places. And so I think a lot of other states are going to be looking at this Arizona case.
And ideally, they're going to be looking at some of our mid-Missouri towns. One of the reasons we're having them on the show, they're here at 8:10. You got to hear this. See, Stephanie Bell is here. Did I introduce Steph?
Good morning.
I introduced Hannah.
Hello.
There's Marsh.
Yep.
He's getting ready to put together That Would Be All except for this. I love when we do this 7:50. Just something a little different before you head into work this morning, and then listen online on our websites, 939theeagle.com. You can listen on KWOS.com. You can also watch on YouTube. Watch on our YouTube channel, Wake Up Mid-Missouri. You can also watch on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page. And if you haven't been on there yet, man, you got to get on there. Hannah's always posting just some really, really cool stuff. And we were talking.
And as Branden likes to say, tap that app.
Tap that app.
Oh, no.
Let's
not.
Listen, these apps.
No, that was like a Mike Pence line, okay?
Who doesn't love a fresh app? These apps, they're fresh, they're new, they're different. Because when you have the same app and it's the same over and over and over, it's kind of boring, doesn't it? Hannah has freshened up these apps, and they are free. So tap that app. Welcome into the show. But here's what
gosh.
Listen, shame on you. Why do your mind always go to the gutter? My goodness. 874-9390. One of the things Hannah has posted, interesting story. Pork producers in Iowa, brilliant marketing move here.
Yeah, the name, image, likeness rules have allowed them to partner with some collegiate athletes. They found 4 football players from Iowa State whose last names spell out Purchase, Moore, Hammond, Bacon. And it's genius.
Yeah, and that's posted on there. But we got to talking about the broad umbrella that is marketing. I was talking about how a lot of times when I meet somebody new and they're like, what do you do for a living? I'm in marketing, which I think is fairly accurate, right? And I talked about like my mom. I used to say, my mom does security for the federal government. Sounds pretty fancy, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
She watched video monitors all day at the Arch. My dad's in the oil industry. My dad, thanks to Bidenomics, he's a cashier at a gas station in Barnhart, Missouri. If you don't know where Barnhart is, it's just south of Arnold, Missouri.
Yeah, I would say a lot of times I don't, depending on the context, but if it's people I don't know, I don't say lawyer, because it'd be like Tobler being like, I'm a doctor, and then people like, I got this rash, and are like, can you help me out?
Which incidentally is what Branden does with Tobler all the time.
Right. And so like if you're sitting on an airplane, and you tell someone, then they want to know what kind of lawyer, and then they want to tell you about their legal troubles, and no, I don't want to hear it.
And here's the thing, listener Scott has an interesting story about what he does for a living I want to get to. But when I do that with Tobler, I pay him at Body of Health. But that's the thing. How do you? So you don't answer lawyer. What do you answer? You answer radio, business owner, small.
Yeah,
business
I usually
owner?
say like I'm in business, and sometimes I say like, yeah, I'm a lawyer, but I try not to.
Marsh, you fudge the truth.
Nah, I mean it's like, what do you do? We're in radio. Oh, really? You fix them or sell them or what?
Show me what you do. Let me see some of what you do. Scott, welcome into the show. Let me ask you this. Scott, what do you do for a living?
Well, I install underground utilities for a living.
Okay, and when people ask you what you do for a living, how do you answer?
Well, I used to go to the bar all the time back in the younger days, and someone would say, well, what do you do for a living? And I'd always say, well, I work for the Conservation Agency, and I install underground canal systems for brown trout. And the reaction was always, oh, really? That sounds interesting.
In other words, people aren't paying attention to your answer. How often do people get the joke when you answer that way?
Well, you would be surprised. More often than not, they don't get it. They think I'm serious.
Yeah. Hey, man, we appreciate you listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Okay, I love the Wake Up community. We listen every day.
I love it. I love the Wake Up family, too. And the Wake Up, sorry, I didn't mean to hang up on you, buddy. We love the family,
Man,
too.
showing the love.
Yeah, we
See
love
ya.
you, too. Click. See ya.
At least it wasn't the governor this time.
And don't forget, by the way, we're talking about our apps. Don't forget to back that app up. Everything get on your phone.
Are you going to give listener David credit for that joke?
Nope.
Okay.
David, thank you. We do appreciate that.
Gotta watch him, David.
I
He'll
didn't-
steal all your good lines.
And I didn't back up all my apps, and it has been a pain in my app to try to get them all back.
You don't have the cloud?
All right. Debate last night. Anybody takeaways? I think we were all like, yeah, it met our expectations.
won.
Embarrassing.
Trump won. Gavin Newsom, who was on with Hannity.
What's going on there?
They're pretty chill. I wonder if it's a bromance. Hannity had Gavin Newsom, California.
Hedging his bets, maybe.
He might be. He's going to play it both ways. He asked Gavin Newsom, who do you think won? Gavin Newsom's answer?
He said Biden.
Joe Biden.
You know, it does make me more excited to watch that DeSantis-Newsom debate since this one was so boring. And it didn't really, we weren't able to really dig down on the issues. And again, I think we should raise those thresholds. Yeah. I really think, there are too many people on the stage, too many people with canned answers like Christie's answer where they're going to, whatever the question is, they've got their answers ready. They're going to say what they're going to say. But I think, a head-to-head between those two about policy, and, I think it's really going to come down to, Florida versus California, which I love. And so I'm excited about that.
Here's what I would say. To qualify for the next debate, there's two requirements, okay? Your first name has to be Ron or Nikki or Vivek. We'll take three requirements. Those are the only requirements to get into the next debate. Evan via text, not a fan of the South Carolinians' attacks on people. Tim Scott, Nikki Haley going at it. I hear you. Thank you for the text. And by the way, we don't always get an opportunity to respond to every single text. We try pretty hard. But sometimes we just simply can't. We do try to respond to them on air. Please know that we are reading theirs. And you will know if you've texted us before, oftentimes you'll get text from the show after 9 o'clock. I will sit in here and try to respond to text after 9 o'clock. We don't always get to them. Our cell phone etiquette ain't always the best and stuff.
Or sometimes if you're really lucky, we'll respond the next morning at like 4 a.m.
Yeah, that's happened before, too, inadvertently. So we try to work on
You have mail.
4 in the morning.
What are you doing?
What you doing? And I wonder about the cell phone etiquette stuff because 52-year-old dude, when texting became a thing, so I'm a digital immigrant. I'm older than Hannah and Stephanie. I am a digital immigrant. Hannah she's grown up with digital technology. It's nothing for her, where people like me and John is different because we are immigrants to digital.
Cut our teeth on the analog era.
So I remember when texting became a thing, and it was like, why you just call? There's no need to text.
Well, it used to be a lot harder because it was like T9 texting, so the typing was a lot more difficult, too. It was easier to call.
Yeah. And now when somebody calls, I'm like, why don't you just text? There's no need for a phone call.
And you can thank Barack Obama's BlackBerry for that era.
Yeah.
I loved the BlackBerry. But yeah, we're getting new tips about phone call etiquette from the Washington Post. They're saying never leave a voicemail. I'm 100% behind that.
Amen. Fist
Do
bump,
not
dude.
leave me a voicemail. Just text me.
Yep. Marsh, you leave voicemails?
Rarely.
Yeah.
I only leave a voicemail if I'm trying to like schedule a doctor's appointment or something like that.
Is
Only
this-
time.
And I'm the same way if it's a business, but a cell phone, I'll never leave a message on a cell phone.
No. And I think, too, like now at my business, and I think most people are like this, if someone leaves a voicemail, the program just transcribes it and sends you an email anyway. And I think the iPhone, has a... What?
You should hear some of the voicemails I get here on the work phone.
Oh, yeah. We couldn't read that transcription on air. But so they're saying never leave a voicemail because, yeah, you could just text somebody. And then, but this one I disagree. So I agree with that one. But then they're also saying before you call someone, you need to text them. That would make me nervous.
No.
Like if you were like, hey, can I call you in 5 minutes? Or like, we need to have a call. I would be like, oh, like about what?
I need you to call me at 9:00.
Yeah. I mean, for business stuff, you set those up. But like for your friends, really?
When I get a message like that from a close friend that says, hey, do you have time for a call? I do. I'm like, uh-oh, because again, my head always goes to the worst possible scenario. But then I find myself doing that sometimes, and I think I'm doing it to be polite. I'm like, hey, is now a good time to call? And if not, I'll send them an email saying, hey, I sent you a text about a phone call.
And I'm like, if you called me and I didn't answer, then it's not a good time, and I'll call you back when I get a chance.
You know what really bothers me, though? When you text someone and they immediately call you. It's like, I didn't call you on purpose. Like, I only wanted a text back.
Well, and now the worst thing about voicemails and what they're saying, so iPhone is releasing FaceTime voicemail, which I've had an app that I love, Marco Polo, where you can do it. So you record yourself, a video of yourself, and it's like, hey, I'm doing this, or hey, call me back, or whatever. So it's asynchronous, like, video. I love that. But they were saying, I mean, imagine yourself as like a 20-year-old kid, instead of like drunk dialing, you're in the middle of the night, hey, but now there's a video of you. Like, I'm just so glad some of this stuff didn't exist when I was a youth.
That's right. Coming up, we're going to be doing, and that would be all except for this. What do you have for us, John?
How about a 250,000 years worth of freezer burn?
It's coming up, freezer burn.
S&P 500 up a point.
And we'll look at futures coming up at 8:25 this morning. We'll be featuring the Morning Bell. And I love this because here's my take. A lot of times business news, it can be old and staid and boring, but not the way Stephanie Bell does it. Check it out. It's coming up at 8:25.
And that would be all, except for this.
Long extinct meat served at an annual Explorers Club dinner in New York City way back in 1951. Turned out it was a little less prehistoric than what the diners were led to believe. Back then, their menu claimed it was giant sloth, with apologies to Hannah and Zootopia. Well, another one said it was meat from an ancient woolly mammoth preserved in a glacier on the Aleutian island of Akutan. They did some DNA research on it, but you'll have to wait for that because let's check the Explorers Club's menu from last year. Explorers Club Martini, featuring a mealworm dipped in Tasmanian leatherwood honey or Zophoba's larvae, drizzled with Bactrian honey, and garnished with an eyeball from a cat or a goat. Insect canapes included scorpions, mealworms, crickets, tarantulas, and earthworms. Guests also had the opportunity to try the hoisin glazed kangaroo, applewood bacon wrapped camel meatloaf, and turtle cassoulet, rattlesnake sliders on the pretzel bun. But the DNA revealed the 1951 woolly mammoth turned out to be nothing more than a modern-day green sea turtle. Now you know the rest of that story.
That feels worse.
That's almost as bad as putting ketchup on chicken, by the way, on fried chicken.
Seriously?
Yeah. Who puts ketchup on fried chicken besides kids?
A toddler.
Right.
Well, are you talking about like chicken tenders or?
It's chicken.
And?
It's chicken.
Ketchup can go on chicken.
It does not. I don't put it on. I quit when I was 4, maybe 5.
Ketchup goes good with woolly mammoth, though.
Well, it's like that story I did for What's Out with Hannah earlier this week. Some of these Beyond Meat type of businesses, they're trying to come up with ways to entice more people, and they're doing exotic fake meat. And they're calling it tiger or, woolly mammoth.
Nope.
Or here, they could just say, put ketchup on the Beyond Meat stuff.
Pretend it's a McNugget.
Yeah.
And I apologize for what I'm about to say next. I get it, and I understand, and I agree with you 100%. So apologies. This thing with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift, they had the Empire State Building lit up in red and white the other night. Heinz ketchup, because of what they saw here in Missouri the other day with Taylor Swift dipping her chicken into ketchup.
A chicken tender. I feel like that makes it different. I don't know why, but I feel like it's different.
Fried chicken, like
yes.
that.
Is it chicken? Is it fried?
So your argument,
Your Honor?
What are you supposed to dip it in?
Yeah.
You can dip it in ranch.
Gross.
You can dip it in hot sauce. You do not dip chicken.
It wasn't a chicken wing.
It's chicken. It's fried. It's fried chicken.
So, but the argument that you're making is any chicken, right?
Yeah.
Should not be dipped in ketchup?
No, not at all.
I think you're wrong.
It wasn't a steak.
I'm siding with Brandon on this one. Ketchup and fried chicken doesn't sound too appetizing.
But Brandon's really saying all chicken.
Yeah.
He's just using fried chicken in this instance.
It's fried chicken, right? It's a chicken. Do you put it on baked chicken?
I mean, yeah, I'd put it on a chicken sandwich before, like a grilled chicken
Grilled
sandwich.
chicken.
Yeah.
Ooh. Barbecue sauce.
Heinz is announcing they're doing, because of what they saw here in Missouri, they're doing a limited number of ketchup and seemingly ranch bottles after Taylor Swift's appearance at the Chiefs game.
She took a photo with a fan, and she had a little pile of ketchup and a little pile of ranch on her plate.
Yeah.
scary people walking around.
Now, if the campers aren't here, there's places to park, and people won't be afraid, and it'll be a new world.
And that's some of the real-life consequences of what happens when you have cities like we've seen in the past with Colombia, for example, and what they've done or actually have not done when it comes to homelessness. Huge case. Stephanie, am I exaggerating to say this is a landmark case as it relates to homelessness?
You're not exaggerating.
Good, because I have a habit of that sometimes.
Yeah.
Landmark case out of Phoenix. Basically, Phoenix, I think they called it the zone, and the city of Phoenix, they were using all these taxpayer dollars that they were taking from the very businesses that they were in effect hurting by putting this homeless encampment downtown, and they were doing nothing about it, and business owners were crying and pleading and begging like, somebody please do something. And finally they said, you know what, we got to go to court. And so they pick up a phone and they called a dude by the name of Ilan Wurman, who handled the case successfully. He is joining us on the show now. Mr. Wurman, we welcome you in. Is there anything I'm missing as it refers to the basic tenets of this case?
No, that's exactly right. It's about 1,000 at its peak, 1,000 people living on the streets in basically an open air, no barrier shelter right in downtown Phoenix. And the residents were working with the city for, a year, 2 years, trying to get something done, pleading with them to get something done. And the city just didn't care. And so they had no choice but to sue, and we finally won.
So what's the legal basis for it? Because we've seen this here, and the exact same thing. That audio, by the way, from some of our colleagues at Fox 10 in Phoenix. I mean, it's the exact same thing, and people quit going to some of these businesses in downtown because they feared for their safety. They didn't like the smell of human feces or human urine. The business owners, by the way, who bring the taxpayer dollars in that pays the city to now, in effect, help these people, they weren't big fans either. What's the legal basis for this, though?
So the legal basis is what's called a public nuisance theory. And public nuisance theory has been somewhat misused, I think, by progressives, particularly over the last several years. They try to argue that, greenhouse gas emitters that contribute to climate change create a public nuisance. Gun manufacturers create a public nuisance. That is a stretch of the public nuisance theory. But public nuisance theory actually has long historical common law roots when it involves actual interference with public property rights to use the streets, right to use the sidewalks. When the public or in a public space, someone emits obnoxious odors, those are actual public nuisance cases. And so what we basically argued, we were arguing against this landscape of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, which basically held in a misinterpreted decision that hopefully will go up to the Supreme Court this term, that there is some degree of a constitutional right to shelter in public places if there are insufficient shelter beds available for everybody, for all the people on the streets. This has been misused. What we were saying is, look, these federal court decisions don't require that you let people camp in all times in all places. There are footnotes in the opinion that say, for example, you can prohibit camping in a public park. And we said, well, look, if it doesn't require you to allow them to camp at all times in all places, it surely doesn't allow you to violate the public nuisance laws. And so we were able to show public nuisance laws. They're defecating, they're discharging garbage. It goes into the storm drains. That's an illegal environmental discharge. That's a public nuisance. The drug use is a public nuisance. The odors are a public nuisance. The obstructions on the streets. All of these things meet the definition of public nuisance, and the court agreed.
And the city government in Phoenix, in effect, they were festering that by using taxpayer dollars to put all of these people in this kind of an interesting type of business district.
So, you win this big court case, but then it's kind of like, what happens now? We saw this in Colombia. They passed a law and they said, we can't have homeless encampments on public grounds. And they, in some parts, it's essentially they backed up a U-Haul and cleared these folks out. What happens next in Phoenix?
So the important thing about a public nuisance declaration is that the city was enjoined to abate the public nuisance. They don't get a choice. I mean, they could ignore the court, but then you're ignoring a judicial ruling. I mean, city officials, they ignore the will of the voters all the time. They refuse to enforce genuinely, legitimately enacted city ordinances, state laws, what have you. But you can't ignore a court finding of a public nuisance, a judicial finding of public nuisance. So if they do not remove the tents, which is the kind of specific condition that the order imposes upon them, then they would be opening themselves up to future damages to the neighbors. They'd be opening themselves up to all sorts of sanctions and so on. And so it's important to argue that what we said in this case is that there are many ways that the city could actually accomplish this objective without throwing anybody in jail. The first thing to keep in mind, again, is that, these federal court decisions, they don't require that there be one bed bed for every one person who's out there on the streets. This is very, very important. What they say is there must be a bed for anybody who would accept it. Okay. Well, the problem is a lot of people who are there on the streets. This was one of the remarkable findings at the trial. Okay. A lot of people choose not to accept shelter because you're not allowed to do drugs in shelter, or because they want 3 tents to themselves. They want more space. The city's expert, I kid you not, said, well, some people don't want to go into shelter because they don't like to go through metal detectors. Like, well, excuse me, I'm sorry. You don't get a choice to defecate on the street or defecate on my neighbor's property because you would rather be on the street and using drugs, than going through a metal detector or whatever. And so what we actually showed is survey data that demonstrated that something like only 14 to 15% of people in downtown Phoenix who are unsheltered cite the lack of available shelter as the reason for their being unsheltered. So what we basically told the court, and he agreed, is you don't need 1,000 beds. You need 150 beds. No one else is going to take the beds, and the judge was persuaded by that. So that's the first thing. And the other thing, of course, is what's called regulated campgrounds, but they genuinely have to be regulated to be effective. They have to be fenced in. You have to be there at night. You can't just be roaming the streets. There's security. There are porta potties and so on. Las Vegas and other cities have used this pretty effectively. And the city of Phoenix has just agreed to open one up. And so we hope that between, these two solutions, the tents will be gone.
All right. Our guest is Ilan Wurman. He's handled this case, very successful case regarding homelessness. This was a case based out of Phoenix. It applies here because of what we see with the lack of leadership in the city of Columbia over the years. And I want to bring up that point. I was on your Twitter or X, I should say, and the number of people that they choose to be homeless, and any chance I get, I will talk about this. Did a documentary on homelessness, and I've done a lot of work with homeless people over the years. I've interviewed them, played their conversations here on the radio show. The majority of people that are homeless, I'm telling you, and you know this, I'm guessing now, the overwhelming majority of people that are homeless, they want to be homeless. They really do. Now let's talk about, so that's the legal aspect. But if you could share for a minute, man, I feel for these business owners. We saw it right here in mid-Missouri because of lack of leadership in Columbia. What these businesses had to endure. What about the business impact in Phoenix there?
Oh, man, it was terrible. It's bad when the New York Times Magazine writes a favorable profile of one of our plaintiffs. And that literally happened. Like in May, there was this feature, or maybe it was in March, there was this feature called a sandwich shop, a tent city, and an American crisis. So even the New York Times looked at our businesses sympathetically. It was the point where there were literally one of the photos that we admitted into evidence was an unsheltered person bending over, spraying diarrhea onto the wall of one of our plaintiffs' buildings. It's that bad every day, cleaning off feces, clearing down urine, the smell. Fentanyl residue. Apparently, fentanyl is transported or I don't know how it's administered, but it comes in foil of some kind. And there's like foil everywhere with residue just like blowing down the street. It was a disaster. It was hard to get employees to come and feel safe. It was a total and utter disaster. It was like a humanitarian crisis. It looks like a third world country down there. And that's the problem. The businesses shouldn't have to bear the burden of that. And quite frankly, the unsheltered people living in those conditions shouldn't have to live in those conditions in a free market capitalist society. And the last thing I'll say on that is sometimes I suspect it's probably a very small proportion of progressive advocates, homelessness advocates, but part of me starts to suspect that they like to see these unsheltered encampments because it makes capitalism look bad, and they want this problem to fester. And so, and their solution, of course, is, well, housing first, free subsidized housing for everybody, a very anti-capitalist solution. And quite frankly, those solutions don't work. And I'm just glad that the business owners decided to finally step up and do something about it.
I think your case is just so important. And, it seems like, you did chalk up a big win in Phoenix, but there are, right here in mid-Missouri, we're experiencing that. But lots of big cities across the U.S. are experiencing that. So are you talking to folks in other states? Are you looking at taking this fight beyond Phoenix?
We certainly are. We actually filed another lawsuit on behalf of some residents in Tucson late last week. By the way, the interesting thing about that is the point in time count that they did last year of unsheltered homelessness and sheltered homelessness and available beds. There were over 1,000 available beds in the Tucson area when they did the point in time count, more than enough for anybody who would want it. We are, I don't know if I can say this, but probably Probably I can. We're dropping another lawsuit in another city today in a different state. So stay tuned for that. And one or two others are possibly coming down the pike. So this is a problem across the board, not just on the West Coast. I mean, it's particularly bad on the West Coast in the Ninth Circuit, but there are many cities that have basically abdicated their responsibility over the homelessness crisis, over the public camping crisis. And we are hoping to do a lot of good in a lot more places.
Now, I don't think we mentioned this, but you are a law professor at Arizona State University. So I'm going to get, we've been doing a lot of nerdy legal talk on the show this week, and I'm going to get nerdy here just for a second. But you said, your theory is this public nuisance, and I honestly have not done a lot of research about public nuisance, and you're taking this fight to other states. Is the public nuisance law similar enough in other states that your theory should be successful, or do you anticipate that in some states maybe this theory won't fly because of their specific state laws or constitution?
So it should work in basically every state in the sense that there is a common law of public nuisance. Sometimes it's modified, by state law. Arizona law was particularly good because there were nuisance statutes that specifically declared certain conditions to be public nuisances, like any government-controlled land not maintained in a sanitary condition. Well, the city's own documents showed that it was a biohazard. They described it as a biohazard. So that worked, but there is a common law of public nuisance that we relied on. We relied on the second restatement of torts, which has public nuisance provisions, which should apply in multiple states. But I won't deny that Arizona's specific nuisance statutes were particularly favorable, but that should not preclude nuisance suits in other states. I mean, there may be other hurdles in other states. Sometimes states will have sort of like an immunity statute, and it might be interpreted in a weird way. Arizona had an immunity statute, but it doesn't really cover this kind of situation. The whole theory here is that the government is acting illegally. You don't get immunity for that, right? I mean, you get government immunity if you're doing something lawful and you're negligent or some harm follows from it. Well, it's not lawful to operate a public nuisance on government land, And so we are pretty confident this theory should work in other states. It should work before other judges, but it will vary in the details from state to state. That's correct.
All right. Attorney Ilan Wurman also teaches law, Arizona State University. Successful case regarding homelessness, important because of what we've seen happen here in mid-Missouri. By the way, when Mr. Wurman took this case and went to court, there were a lot of folks going, you're wasting your time. Very impactful, very important, and we are grateful for your time. Mr. Wurman, thank you for joining us this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Thanks so much for having me and for your interest in the story.
You bet. Bill text, if homelessness is solved and everyone has a place to stay, homeless advocates and groups will lose the millions in funding that they get from the federal government. Some truth to that. Morning Bell, business news with a little twist coming up your way 5 minutes from now.
We're back on our airline stuff. Delta's making big changes, and now they're thinking about Futures are currently in the red, but just slightly. And about 20 minutes ago when I looked, they were just slightly green. So they are kind of sticking with the status quo right now, but currently just a little bit in the red. Delta is walking back some changes, and I think this is important. I know we no longer have Delta here in mid-Mo, but obviously they fly out of Missouri. And it's important because all these airlines kind of watch each other, I think, and then they try to match each other. And so, it might be Delta this week, but it's American. And actually, the changes that Delta announced were kind of a copycat of changes American had already made. And so it's how you get your loyalty status. And they were saying, and American went to this model where it's not just how much you fly, it's how much you spend on their credit card and how many points. And so, so basically they said, yeah, you might have gotten your elite status this year, but now we have so many more people that have elite status that we're raising the bar. So next year you can fly the same amount, spend the same money, but you're not going to get the same benefits. And I think even with the lounges, they were saying, you're going to have a limited number of trips. So maybe you get 10, and then, after that, your time's up. And they said these lounges are just packed. And I will say from personal experience, I think that the recent time I tried to go into the American Express lounge, it was an hour-long wait. And it's like, my layover is only an hour and a half. Like, that does me no good. And I think the important part of this, and so people were mad, like big mad about these Delta changes, saying, I fly with you, I'm loyal with you because of the expectation I have of what you've told me about these programs, and now you're basically pulling the rug out from underneath me. And Delta's CEO yesterday came out and said, yeah, we went too far, and we're going to modify our planned changes. And so I really think this is kind of the year of the consumer. We see, what consumers rose up and did with Bud Light. They kind of did a little bit with Target. They're really, I think people are really coming together and unifying and saying, we don't like this. And companies are actually are listening. And I think, when we can have a voice, and because before it's like, how could you ever take on Delta? But if enough people get mad, guess what? They're going to change these policies. And I think we need to start. And I guess JetBlue said, hey, we'll take you over here. And I'm wondering if Delta started seeing the numbers of people saying, you know what? I'm over this Delta. I will go fly with somebody else.
I wonder if it's a response from COVID of just consumers being so sick of everything changing and being stripped of all the fun stuff. I wonder if it's just consumers finally putting their foot down and saying, no, I don't actually want to do that.
Well, while we're having successes with the airline industry, or starting with some of these things, I mean, Budweiser, poor Budweiser, basically based here in Missouri, and what they've been, and I don't mean to say poor Budweiser. The bigger thing I think with a lot of people, besides their drastic drop in sales, is nobody coming out and taking ownership. Can we get after cell phone companies too? Like, when I buy a phone, do I have to buy a charger separately? And
Now, how much more bitter can I get?
What is the future of cable? What is the future of news?
In the media today, the problem is they're all afraid. At 8 o'clock on the Fox News channel, nobody knew what we were going to say. So whether they liked us or they hated us, didn't matter. That son of a bitch, I want to find out what he's going to say to them.
So last night during the debate, several big things were happening. So you had the GOP presidential debate. My big takeaway is it met my expectations. And
that's maybe not a good thing.
That's right. I'm not saying that in a positive way. It just didn't. They're talking over it. So I listened to it. My goodness. When you see people on these cable news outlets and they're doing, they got 17 people on the round table and they're all talking and arguing over each other, that it's just not worth watching. But as I'm listening to it, especially some of the exchanges, I think it was Nikki and Tim and then Nikki and Vivek, it was kind of like, my gosh, man, will one of you just please shut up? Talk nice.
One of them got threatened to have their microphones turned off. Did you catch that part?
And I wish they would do that.
Right? I'm sitting there listening to, 5 people talk over each other. And I'm thinking to myself, that was an option? Why didn't we do that 30 minutes ago?
Or stick them with a cattle prod. Something. Make them stop talking. Take control. So, and that's my big takeaway for the debate. Maybe DeSantis did a little better. I felt bad for the mayor of North Dakota, Doug Burgum. So here's
the governor.
So I'm listening to this, John, and after a while, it occurs to me. I'm like, okay, that's Nikki, that's Tim, that's Vivek, Chris. There's Mike, and I'm like,
isn't Doug standing up there?
I had to go and turn the TV on because I didn't hear Doug. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he was in the debate. Sure enough, he was. Matter of fact, post-game on Fox, he even said, man, they didn't even call on me for 45 minutes. The other thing interesting in the post-game, Sean Hannity getting all chummy with Gavin Newsom. Now, they've been kind of, I don't know if, I might be exaggerating to say they're buds, but they get along personally. They disagree on stuff politically. But that is a great example of, Sean Hannity, who's here this afternoon, 2 o'clock. Him and Gavin, they get along. And I think that's proof. That interview we featured a couple of weeks ago with this mid-Missouri couple. He's a 60-year-old something staunch Democrat. She's a MAGA supporter, and they've been married 38 years and have never agreed on politics. Doesn't mean they can't get along. Anyhow, but I think that the winner, Doug Burgum, according to Gavin Newsom, the winner of the debate was
Joe Biden.
Everybody else, there's no clear consensus on it. And I won't even pick a winner. It was just kind of like
Trump.
Trump. Frank Lutz, very well-known pollster in political circles. He said, it was Trump. However, there was something kind of funny, and then we'll move on to this, because one of the things I love about the Wake Up Mid-Missouri family, which includes you for listening, it also includes Stephanie Bell. Good morning, Steph.
Good morning.
It includes Brian Houseworth.
Good morning.
It includes John Marsh. And John, I want to take a minute here to congratulate you and Brian Houseworth while we're talking about debates. We have a gubernatorial debate, and you guys are handling. How is this going to work, Marsh?
It's a little later this month. We're going to have the 4 GOP gubernatorial candidates at Missouri Farm Bureau in Jefferson City, and stay tuned on that one. Much more coming. Could be very entertaining, we hope.
I think it'll be entertaining. What I'm really hoping, Branden and John, is that we can get into policy issues. And I absolutely, I know I know 3 of the 4 candidates. I don't know the 4th candidate. I met him that one night in Columbia. But I don't want a fiasco like last night. I don't. I think that is an embarrassment.
Here's some ideas that Hannah and I and John, and that's producer Hannah, by the way.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. By the way, so the things we love about the Mid-Missouri Wake Up family, the people here on the show, and you for listening, here's what we love about you. The array of comments that we've got on various issues this morning, whether it's the debate, whether it's how you fudge what you do for a living, or whether it's whether or not chicken should be dipped in ketchup. Fried chicken, in my opinion, is not going. These are the things people are weighing in. So we're going to get into the mailbag here in a few minutes. That's one of the reasons we love you. But I thought this was, so here's our ideas for the debate to keep things under control. Mm-hmm. Hannah has a suggestion as it relates to microphones.
Yeah, when their time is up, just turn the microphone off. I wish I could do that here on the show, honestly.
Or Brian, let me ask you this. I think I have a better idea about Hannah. Will you quit turning my microphone off? That's not funny, Hannah.
Sorry.
I understand.
Your time's up.
Here's the. How about this idea? if they don't finish their thought in the time allotted. What do you think about, and I can be there, you and John moderating the thing, and me and Steph on either end of the 4 candidates with cattle prods. Shock them if they don't shut up.
I'm super sad that they didn't do a lot of hand raising. Like the question, yes or no. I wanted that question, and then they tried to do like Final Jeopardy style at the end. They're like, write on your notepad and then flip it over, and the candidates weren't biting on that.
The only time that evening that they took the moral high ground.
And Lieutenant Governor, I'm guessing Mike Kehoe, he's a rancher. He's probably got a couple cattle prods he'd let us.
He definitely does down in Phelps County.
Use.
I do believe, yes, I do believe he does. He definitely does on his farm down there. But I do believe, I do believe
we'll work on it.
Our 3 candidates that are on 4, I think we're going to be okay. But yeah, I think it'll be very interesting to see. And of course, there is a Democratic candidate who's running as well. Her name is Crystal Quaid, and who knows? I mean, she's a long shot, but you never know. You never know.
I think seeing Eigel go up against the other guys in person is going to be really entertaining.
And Bill Eigel is out on Twitter this morning saying he's got another straw poll win. This one is from Oktoberfest. It notes that it's not scientific. It's based on a random sampling of passerbys at Oktoberfest. And he is saying that 32% said they support Bill Eigel, 47% undecided, 16 for Ashcroft, 5 for Kehoe. And my favorite tweet so far, I think, is by Tim Garrison. And he said, ask U.S. Senator Eric Greitens about straw polls. But Eigel right now is touting some of these. I think there was another one he was citing already this week. So it's going to be, that debate is going to be one that I'm excited to watch.
Especially with Marsh and Houseworth handling. I'm really excited and stoked that you guys were personally asked to do that. Funny moment from the debate last night, and we'll move forward and get maybe to the mailbag here. So I think it's Vivek and Nikki, and they're talking about TikTok and the evils of social media and all this stuff. And you'll hear, I got to set this up a little bit. So TikTok is bad. And then you'll hear one of the moderators, she say, okay, we'll cover that when we come back. Now we go to commercial break. The first commercial in the commercial break is what you're listening for.
Wanting kids to go and get on the social media that's dangerous for all of us. You went and you were in business with the Chinese that gave Hunter Biden $5 million. We can't trust you. We can't trust you. We can't have TikTok and our kids' lives. We need to ban.
We'll take that up when the debate continues.
It's because of TikTok that I had to go out and get a whistle.
Man, that's expert trolling.
It was the very first commercial out of the break. Letters. All right, let's open up the mailbag.
I get letters.
We don't get any letters.
So many
we
letters.
get voicemails sometimes.
A whole bunch of letters.
Yep.
Facebook messages.
I'd even read mail from a cow.
And text 874-9398. 749390. All right, a lot of the text this morning. I think, the debate people are like, yeah.
I'm with you, Rebecca. Rebecca said, is it me or does Doug Burgum look like the bald eagle in the old Muppet Show? And I said that last night. I'm like, he looks like a Muppet. I think, does he dye his eyebrows black? Because his hair it's the eyebrows.
I don't want to go comment on anybody's appearance. Somebody gave me flack the other day. A listener after the show said, well, you said Glenn Fetterman looked like an ogre, and you say that you... I said, well, I understand what you're saying, but let me correct you. I said, I didn't say he looked like an ogre. I said he is an ogre. 2 very different things. But Doug Burgum is like, his face is here, but the eyebrows and the hair is right here.
It's weird. It is weird.
Easy
looking.
on the microphone there.
But you also have to be able to laugh at yourself. I was watching clips of the Kelsey Brothers podcast, and if you've seen Jason Kelsey, he also has very prominent eyebrows, and he was saying, one day I was on the field and I was talking all sorts of crap, but I wasn't in. I was sitting on the bench, and I forget which player, and he was talking, and this player looks over and he's like, eyebrows, you're not even on the field. And he was like, eyebrow. And so he was like, I couldn't even come back from that. But he had a sense of humor about it, right? I mean, we can comment on people's appearance, but
so like you can't. So I can talk about Doug Burgum's eyebrows, but I can't talk about how hot like Kristi Noem is. That's inappropriate. So
you can, I guess.
Marsh, what'd you pull out of the mailbag?
We've got a text from our buddy Firefighter Al, who describes himself as a dad of 3 Swifties and says, reference Taylor Swift dipping the chicken into ketchup. His advice, Shake It Off.
Ah, good.
Get a
good,
couple
good.
of points. 24 hours.
Pretty
from now.
good.
Feel good.
Sure, he's heard enough Taylor Swift songs to last him a lifetime.
Well, we got to talk about ketchup on fried chicken, and I just don't think it ever goes on there. And Taylor Swift, and I'm sorry for mentioning Taylor Swift. My goodness, they had the Empire State Building lit up red and white the other day. I don't know if it's for the Chiefs or for the fact she had ketchup and ranch dressing she was dipping her chicken in. I argue there's no reason that fried chicken should ever be dipped in ketchup.
You said chicken in general.
Yeah, chicken in general. Roasted chicken.
I think that's the hot take there.
Yeah? I don't think ketchup in any circumstance.
Chicken fingers, chicken McNuggets.
No.
Yeah, that's
My
what I'm
takeaway
thinking.
on this whole thing, we're missing the bet. Bud Light ought to put her picture on a limited edition of cans and see what happens.
Gosh, if Bud Light were smart, Taylor Swift could maybe save Bud Light. Doug says the only time you put ketchup on chicken is if you don't cook it right. And then we were talking about cell phone etiquette. Somebody who brought up Obama's, it was John, brought up the BlackBerry. We were talking about cell phone
They had to
etiquette.
take it away from him because he was so addicted to it.
Catherine says, I miss my Crackberry, is what they used to be called.
Yep.
I loved mine.
I remembered my parents having those.
They were great.
Yeah.
All right, that's in the mailbag. Coming up, we'll do some leftovers, a couple of things we didn't get a chance to get to on the show. Some folks in Cole County doing something really cool. Want to highlight that. It's coming up right before we get into the Gary Nolan Show. Olin Show and highlight some of the work from some folks in Cole County and Jefferson City. Capital City CASA opened up its new office. They really needed some extra space, and these CASA volunteers. Matter of fact, one of our former Wake Up Mid-Missouri family members, Laura Nauser, was involved for that for a long time. But you volunteer and you're an advocate on behalf of kids that, I don't want to say are in the court system for legal issues, but the family separation, things like that, and the work that they do in advocating for these kids is incredibly important. So I thought that was really cool. Steph, what do you have for leftovers?
Apparently, it only costs you $1,000 to pay someone to burn down their business.
Story reminds me of the realtor last year, a couple years ago.
At the lake, yeah. She paid someone, I think it was about $1,000, or allegedly. I think she ended up getting off, but allegedly paid someone to knock off her mother-in-law or something.
Yeah. And it was, I don't remember the dollar amount, and I don't know how much it cost to have somebody assassinated, but whatever the dollar amount was, I'm like, yeah.
Kind of low ball.
That's what I thought, too.
Well, this is being levied against a business owner here in Columbia, Casa Maria's Cantina's co-owner. Her name is Crystal Humphreys. They are alleging that she paid someone in the boot heel to start a fire at a restaurant, allegedly because, Humphreys was upset at the owner of the business because he ran off with her husband. And this is down in Kennett, Missouri. And so they actually did start the fire, and allegedly she paid $1,000 in cash up front and then $485.05 through the Cash App. It's an oddly
specific amount.
Anyway, the person who set the fire is in the Dunklin County Jail. When our news partners ABC 17 wrote the article, they said Humphreys was still not yet in jail, but there is a warrant out for her arrest.
Mr. Marsh, what do you got for leftovers?
Well, let's see. Wayno says he's thrown his last pitch. I guess we covered that one the other day. Finally got to 200. And Cardinal fans, I don't know, 89 losses this year for the first time since 1997.
Wah, wah.
And I think, is this the last time in the Cardinals' history, in the entire history, and they've been playing ball for, a little bit, I think it's the first time in the history of the Cardinals that there's been the three divisions within the National League, but the first time that they will ever have come in solely in last place in the Central Division. We covered this a little bit this morning. I don't know who changed gears quicker. Was it Chuck Schumer on the dress code in the Senate or Delta Airlines in the club membership thing? So
I think it was the Senate.
Yeah, so Stephanie Bell covered in the Morning Bell about half an hour ago, Delta and increasing the criteria to get into their club that you see at the airport, and they changed it up not too long ago, and they were backtracking.
They're already backtracking, but the Senate is backtracking even more quickly.
So they were going to allow Fetterman to go into the United States Senate and dress like as a homeless person. They didn't think there was a problem with that, and I've evolved on this too. Initially, I'm like, I don't care, get stuff done. I don't care what you wear, and then within a matter of hours, I saw Fetterman gaveling in the Senate dressed like that, and what an embarrassment. Steph and I have always been very big on, since the events of January the 20th of 2021, how we look on a worldwide stage. People across the world are paying attention to this dude, and I never said he looked like an ogre. I've never said that about Glenn Fetterman.
Are you sure?
I said he is.
Yeah, we kind of jumped in together on that one and said he is an ogre.
Yeah. I mean, he couldn't even wear jeans. I feel like jeans would have even been an improvement.
Something.
The other thing I'm watching today, and I was hoping we wouldn't have to go here about the shutdown, and we talk about what does it really matter? But I'm starting to see they're actually saying this is how it's going to affect you, and they're saying, okay, you still have to go through TSA. They don't go home and you just get to jump on the airplane. They're essential technically, but then they're not doing any hiring. So that's one thing they're saying. Hey, we already have kind of a squeeze on travel. That's going to hurt us. Government contractors, which I know we have a ton of here in mid-Missouri, they might see their payments delayed or even not receive payments while it's shut down. So there is a lot of impact, and we are 36 hours, 48 hours away.
Past shutdowns, Branden can relate to it from his mom's employment. They shut down the Arch.
Oh, yeah. They said national parks will be open potentially, but probably not the national park bathrooms. That's what this article says.
They don't want anyone falling in.
Yeah.
And if you missed the visual earlier during the
Can I say before we get into Gary Nolan here, and my dad's chomping at the bit waiting for his favorite show to come here on the radio, but we had this attorney on who successfully argued this very important case as it relates to homelessness and cities quit throwing money at these homeless people and supporting homeless people. But he told a story about somebody who
Come on, say the words.
Who bent over and spray painted